Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 2025 edition of Landscape and Advocacy Strategies Month Ahead webinar. We do this every month. Many of you, I recognize your names. You're familiar with what we do. For the newcomers, we do this every month. We take a look at the month ahead and our advocacy experts. Today we have Paul and Stefan provide commentary and advice on what we're looking at for the upcoming month. People value this a lot, and so we're very happy to have all of you here and many of you back. And let me just briefly introduce myself before moving to our speakers. My name is Michel. I'm the founder and CEO of Lanzcape, which is a new advocacy assistant. We are really embracing this new age of AI. The world is changing incredibly rapidly, and that's what we are embracing. Delivering something different. Instead of a big, complicated dashboard on your laptop screen, we want to be your advocacy assistant that is with you at all times, delivering policy awareness and advice at any moment and wherever you are. Get in touch with me after this if you want to try it out or if you want to talk about it. Be very happy to do that. Today, our speakers are Stefan and Paul, both from our sister company, AdvocacyStrategy, which itself is also a groundbreaker in advocacy consulting, focusing on best practice and public affairs management, as well as strategies. Stefan is presenting today for the first time. Welcome very much to these meetings, Stefan, and hope we can be repeating this on a regular basis. Paul is a regular, many of you know. So I'm going to hand off now. I think, Paul, you're taking it from here for the first section.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Michelle. So welcome, everyone. And so today we're going to be looking through as usual, we're going to be looking through the key institutions, looking at some of the developments taking place, reflecting a little bit of what has happened in the last month, but also looking, of course, forward to the coming month. We try and provide some advice as well on what you might be already doing, might be thinking of doing, and we hope that this will be of value to you as we move forward this month. I will also have a little section today where we're going to discuss a use case for using ChatGPT to analyze and understand better the simplification and omnibus packages. So that's a little bit what we have for you today. Just as we do per usual, a little reminder about the checklist from last month, and the situation is rather similar again this month. We have many initiatives that are in the pre-proposal stage, but we are also seeing now a lot of public consultations, a lot of proposals being published. We recommend that you, given the structure of the work program this year with so many non-legislative initiatives as well as evaluations, we recommend that you allocate resources to these files. And of course, we last month saw very much the implications of the new Trump administration, or not so new, on EU trade in particular and the EU-US relationship, as well as the uncertainty around that. Moving forwards, we are seeing, as I mentioned, we're starting to see some of these non-legislative proposals translating themselves into legislation. We're going to have a little look later on at some of these omnibus packages and simplification packages. And we see, as an example here, the first proposals coming out around the digital omnibus package with measures relating to GDPR. This came out on the 21st of May. Notably looking at reducing administrative burden, reporting requirements for SMEs, and we're, of course, looking to, in line with the priorities, to accelerate the shift towards a digital regulatory framework. So these are now moving towards the Parliament and Council, and you need to review, of course, and get ready for engagement at the parliamentary level as well as within the member states. We're seeing the early stages of selection of committees and nomination of rapporteurs. So we recommend indeed that you look for your champions and you look, of course, to position key champions on these files. So now we will see a little bit later on that a lot of the simplification and omnibus packages that we saw in the Q1 and Q2 work program are now out for public consultation. Many of these consultations are running from May through to end of July. And that, of course, means it's time for you to build your position and bring it to the Commission within your organization to look to formulate and understand the potential impact of these issues on your organization. So making a little move forward, as I mentioned before, we are starting to see quite a few proposals that are coming through. In the last 7 days, we saw the Omnibus package, the Omnibus 4 package moving to the Parliament and Council. We're also seeing strategies relating to SMEs and the Common Agricultural Policy Simplification package, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So make sure you check out and monitor this drafting process, keeping a close eye on the Have Your Say and the public consultations. Like I mentioned just before, we can see things around health tech, digital justice, energy efficiency, CAP, batteries, mid-caps, omnibus on the digital age, etc., and the quantum strategy of the EU. All of these things are moving through, and it's time for you to turn your attention to those. With that in mind, indeed, I'll repeat myself briefly, but the Commission is indeed starting to fill out this legislative pipeline. We'll look at how these packages themselves are translating into legislative proposals. Many of these came out already. We saw a round of legislation coming out and being published and adopted by the Commission on the 21st of May. And in particular, this omnibus package around GDPR simplification for high-risk data processing activities. As I mentioned before, so you really need to ensure you have a close eye now on these upcoming files in terms of also taking into account the fact that the European Commission, this new mandated Commission is keeping a little bit this top-down tradition. So you need to ensure strong dialogue with the Cabinet and the services in the build-up to these being adopted by the College. Make sure, for example, you keep a spreadsheet of the Work Programme 2025. You can track the process of these files through the public consultations into the inter-service and finally up to the College, with a view then of ensuring that you are engaging with these steps, planning for them, and of course, getting ready for the legislative phase, which will come. Indeed, we should see quite a lot of non-legislative actions as well in the third quarter coming, probably after the summer to a certain extent, or maybe also in July. So make sure you're acting now in this drafting phase, engaging with these early steps of the drafting work with the European Commission. Make sure you're now also ready for these new proposals coming out of the Commission and ensuring that you have your mapping up to date. Make sure your mapping is focusing indeed on the Commission, and make sure that, of course, your mapping translates to a reflection on your messaging relating to the impact of these proposals, both good and bad, leading to arguments and counter-arguments. And make sure, of course, therefore, that you are not only planning your external engagement, but also focusing very much on working and looking internally, collaborating with your technical experts to develop those positions and understanding of the impact of these proposals as they are being put together. So make sure you keep reevaluating these proposals and texts. Make sure you understand your top 3 to 4 priorities within each of these proposals, and then you're able to move forward. So that's a little bit my reflections on the European Commission. I'm going to hand over now to Stefan, who's going to talk to you about the European Parliament and the Council. And over to you, Stefan. You're muted, Stefan.
My first time, please forgive me. Thank you, Paul. Well, and thank you, Michelle, for having me. I'm very excited to be able to take part in this little look ahead of what is to come. As Paul just outlined, we are moving from the pre-legislative stage now more into the real legislative phase, which is quite interesting. When you move from the Commission, then suddenly the Parliament has a little bit less time to look at itself and has to move into a more the role that it has within the legislative train. We already see that in this month's plenary session and the committee meetings. So There still is a little bit of internal work going on, like lifting the immunity for the MEPs who are implicated in the Huawei scandal. But also there are now increasingly the tables coming together for what the work has to be done in for example, the Econ committee, the Envy committee, the IMCO committee. So the committee meetings that are going to take place between the 2nd and 5th and the 23rd and 26th of June are quite full already with real legislative files. When you look at that reality, then of course you also need to consider what that kind of changes in your approach towards working with the European Parliament. Now, I clicked on the wrong slide. I'm sorry for that. So the first step to do is really to keep your eye on the ball, which is easiest done with using the Legislative Observatory of the European Parliament. It will inform you about every step that happens, and of course utilize a tool like Lanzcape to get automated alerts if something actually moves and you haven't looked into the observatory. Also, something that is often, especially when several legislative dossiers that are of relevance to you come into play, is resource allocation. So you really need to make sure, do you have enough people, do you have enough resources to make sure that you're able to follow and potentially engage in all of these discussions in a timely fashion. There's a lot of preparation to be done, especially in preparing your conversations with potential rapporteurs or shadow rapporteurs. But first, you also could, if you have the capacity, take part in their selection. There is a method behind it called the Hunt method. You can Wikipedia that. It's a fairly old and proven method of assigning the rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs and the files. So each of the parties does get a proportional say and role in these files. And but of course, if you motivate, inform, and engage at an early stage, there is the possibility that you may push a little bit into a direction that your relevant dossiers are being taken up by a party or lead that might be a little bit more in your favor. Important part is be aware of who is taking the lead, be aware of the Conference of Presidents, which is basically the deciding body inside the Parliament about these things, and make sure that you are well in touch with the committees, the committee chairs, and also the party group coordinators. That's a little bit below the political level. That's the administrative level within the parties, but they're very knowledgeable and they're sometimes much easier to approach than, for example, an MEP himself. And just be aware when the decisions are being taken. The other part, which is a little bit closer to my home, is when we always say, like Paul mentioned it, engage. What does engage actually mean? So you need to make sure that not only do you know the stakeholders, but you also know the files and you know how to best connect your topic and your issue with the file and the stakeholder. So you need to have your facts right, your story right, and you need to have actually a story to tell to the relevant stakeholders. Evidence that you can provide will elevate you as a trusted expert and potential compromise builder. If you, let's say, you're on not only on one side of the aisle, but you can actually develop a bridge to the other side of the aisle, then suddenly you can come to much easier conclusions there. And the sooner you are able to position yourself in these discussions, the more you will likely get out of it. You also should take into account that the MEPs are a very diverse group of people. There are MEPs, for example, who are largely regionally rooted, like in Germany. So we have regional districts. So these MEPs will be influenced by their region's interest. In other countries, that is less so. So you can also tailor your approach and your narrative on the individual interest of the respective stakeholder in the European Parliament. moving forward to what is going on in the Council. So we are in the last stage of the Polish presidency. Looking at the current political developments in Poland, that's probably a good thing. But nevertheless, every presidency has a tendency to try to push out some final legislation to, in the end, have a track record saying, okay, we got this done. So just be aware of that. The presidency had a mantra of Security Europe, where defense and security, border protection, and all of these things played a very high role. So there is a certain chance also on the agricultural side that something will still be pushed forward before the Danish presidency takes over. The Danish presidency, that is one really crucial thing you should do, is familiarize yourself already with what the Danes are looking into. It's a very early stage. It gives you the opportunity to connect to those inside the Danish administration that will push forward the agenda, and it will give you both a little bit more insight in what is happening and also potentially a road in for your own messaging and your own positions there. In terms of other meetings, you of course have the G7 in Canada happening now, again with Mr. Trump taking part, so it will be a very interesting meeting after there were some, let's say, friction also with the host country Canada, and of course the European partners, and it will be interesting to see, especially in terms of trade relations, how this G7 will actually go down. The other thing, the big elephant in the room, of course, is the continuous support for Ukraine, which is also very important to the European partners. Apart from that, on the international stage, I don't think we need to rest here too long. Just when you look at the importance of the Council, it's a very powerful organization, but you have to be extremely aware of what is going on in the different member states. So something like today, with the leadership in the Netherlands breaking apart, can have a huge impact on the voting behavior within the Council. It is really key that you continuously monitoring the majority setup within the Council to predict how a certain dossier might go either way. And these political shifts, be it in Poland or in the Netherlands or potentially Italy, these are very important to keep in mind. The other part is mentioned here, keep an eye out on the developments of the EU and US Justice and Home Affairs meeting. This is more if you are invested in the area of policing, security, to a degree data protection, things like that, that can be a good indicator on where the development is going. Trying to speed up a little bit. Yeah, other developments. In June, we will also see, and I think it is very friendly of the Polish presidency that they separated this location-wise. You have the EU Green Week, the Circular Solutions for a Competitive EU, and you have the EU Industry Days. There's quite some potential for friction between those two events happening because the industry and the Green Week not always have seen eye to eye. In the recent years, they all came together under the third topic that is on the agenda, that is sustainability and sustainable energy. And we also will have the Sustainable Energy Week. So if you're working in any way in the area of sustainability, competitiveness, and circular economy, then this will be a very busy month for you. Do you have the opportunity to directly influence by attending these meetings? Probably not, but it is a perfect opportunity to meet either allies or potentially also your opponents and assess what their line of argument is and potentially adapt your own arguments. You can meet legislators and stakeholders, and you can also field test some of your narratives, some of your arguments without risking a big backlash. You can do that in individual conversations. And you can, of course, also position your own topics and see how the reaction is, if there's a willingness to ally, to work together, to collaborate. And these events are always a very good opportunity to do so. Now, I said all that without showing the advice slide, but this is basically the sum up of how you can utilize these events. I would very much encourage you or people in your organization to make sure to schedule the meetings way ahead. Make sure you're prepared, you have your message set ready, you have some briefing notes, and make sure that you not only prepare the meeting, but if somebody attends, you also have a little wrap-up and analysis of what is the outcome of your engagement in these meetings. And with that, I think I will hand it back to Paul.
Paul, your mic is off.
Apologies. So thank you. Yes, I want to take a moment to share just a little bit of experimentation I've been doing around actually the simplification and omnibus proposals. This stems from actually conversations with a number of different clients relating to what sort of strategies they would want to deploy in relation to these activities versus their traditional focus, for example, on sectoral policies. So looking at these opportunities indeed to understand what sort of possibilities exist for them to engage and potentially push through some of their key priorities on a more accelerated timescale relating to this. So in this case, I felt myself as well that I was not as familiar from my own experiences working with simplification packages and omnibus proposals and these reforms. So I wanted also myself to develop a better understanding of how these function, if in effect we all need to have a good grip on these by understanding the policy process through which they go through in order to engage with it. That was a gap that I felt needed to be filled for myself. And I wanted to share a little bit some of my experimentation using tools such as ChatGPT to build a better understanding of what these are and how they work in comparison to more traditional legislative proposals. So just for some context, of course, what we're going through now, of course, is maybe the hangover of the last mandate in terms of a legislative glut. We saw there were at least 110 proposals carried over, so they hadn't even finished what they started in the last mandate. And now we are, of course, kicking off again with, though a slightly smaller round of legislative proposals, but a great deal of activity seeking to promote competitiveness and simplification. And this is not the first time that we see this. For some of you, you may remember the Barroso Commission in the 2000s, at the beginning of the 2000s, which indeed drove for better regulation and set in place a lot of the tools that exist now to improve the quality, efficiency, and in that time, the legitimacy of the EU. So a lot of these proposals, like one piece of legislation in and one piece of legislation out principles, as well as the regulatory scrutiny board and strengthening of impact assessments and public consultations have carried through to the successive commissions in the intervening 20 years. However, we also see potentially some divergences taking place to this under the von der Leyen Commission. Indeed, we might also see a move away from maybe more technical and process focused to more strategy focused under von der Leyen. And maybe the concern for legitimacy, though still a valid point, has been maybe overtaken by the concern for competitiveness, whether that's competitiveness against China and many of the developed economies, as well as, of course, more traditional partners such as the United States. So key question there is, of course, if we're going to engage with these new tools, the simplification packages, etc., we need to better understand them and understand how they function. So I set aside a little bit of time to reflect upon categorizing and understanding and defining these different documents, which, to a large extent, we are familiar, of course, with strategic documents, but certainly from my own perspective, a little bit less with the omnibus and simplification measures. So I took a moment there, indeed, using some of these tools to try and define and understand their legal basis, with a view then to, of course, understand the process for engaging with them. So we, of course, have this fitness checks, roadmaps, strategic documents, simplification packages, omnibus proposals, each with a different role along this policy process. So the early signals are definitely coming from these fitness checks and the roads maps, which we understand, of course, are the pre-drafting signals that we can use then for shaping upcoming legislation. And in a lot of conversations, I emphasize the importance of engaging with these, because the earlier you engage, the more you have an opportunity to shape the narrative. And of course, the narrative isn't shaped at the moment legislation is being drafted, but usually when it is being evaluated. Strategic documents, of course, they set the direction that the Commission is heading, and the simplification and omnibus packages are something much closer to legislation, because they are indeed setting out often legislative and non-legislative measures or implementational measures as well, and packages of legislation which will then rolled out based upon these packages, seeking to achieve horizontal aims across different legislative proposals. So indeed, the simplification and omnibus packages are particularly interesting in the fact that they are quite close to the legislative process themselves. Just to illustrate a little bit some of my reflection process, I was using ChatGPT not where it is strong indeed, and that is in understanding and looking at policy-making processes and drawing from Eurolex and the treaties and other documents, the rules of procedure of the Commission, etc., in order to identify and understand the legal basis and the traditional processes and steps of these different tools that I just listed before. GPT is a fantastic tool to help you do this preliminary work, to look through and to try and schedule, understand, as you saw in the previous table. It's a thinking tool. I ask questions, I break it down, you cross-reference, you compare. Indeed, for example, the rules of procedure. Another very useful aspect of this is to understand its ability to help you organize materials and documents in a chronological way. So by understanding the process, you can then map out the evolution of the policy process and the key documents in that process. And iteration then allows you to check your assumptions, to summarize, ensure that you really get a good view on understanding about this policy-making processes, and zooming in then, in my case, on the simplification packages, indeed. So this was a little bit some of the ideas that I used, and indeed you can then break it down by, for example, taking the simplification package. You can, analyze the documentation. So by, indeed, collating all relevant materials, whether that is the consultation documents with this network study reports, the roadmaps, the staff working documents, the simplification package itself, any associated materials, you're able then to analyze indeed and try and create a chronological roadmap, looking at some of the differences in this process to what's traditionally the case. So in this case, impact assessments and regulatory scrutiny board having a less of a role due to the fact that this wasn't a proposal in its own right. However, I think that this is a very interesting way of understanding the process that we can then apply to other and future simplification packages. If the key message here is that you need to understand the process in order to be able to map it out for future processes you want to engage with, something that Michelle does in Lanzcape as well, it's important, of course, to get that overview. And in this case, indeed, we could see that the staff working document replaced the impact assessment and the regulatory scrutiny board. And we were able to see also that this proposal was fast-tracked through simplified measures, and that there was indeed an inter-service consultation. So with that, you're able to also explore questions to understand why, for example, the RSB was not consulted in this manner. So in this case, I thought it would just be nice to show some of the functionality and how you can, through iterative exploration with GPT, you can break down, in this case, the CAP simplification package to understand its legal basis, to understand its chronology and process, and in effect, allow you to inform your choices about how you want to, well, what scope there is for engagement and how you could potentially engage with this versus potentially your sectoral legislation, and how you may well want to explore and engage with other simplification and omnibus packages as they develop with their own pathways. Indeed. So that was just a little overview. And with that in mind, I just wanted to jump then through to give you a small reminder for the month. So indeed, now you have to, you have to focus on the public consultations, which are really coming thick and fast in the European Commission, the transition now to the parliamentary work, where you need to look at the selection of committees, of rapporteurs, ensuring that the right people are in place. You have to ensure your argumentation and messaging is updated and that your strategies are now being revised in order to take into account these developments. There is, of course, a lot of intense workload in the Council, and indeed, we are looking, of course, as well, like we mentioned earlier, to the Danish presidency kicking off at the end of this month. So, as I mentioned before, what we try and do in the example I gave, indeed, is to try and think about the public affairs that you do in a structured manner, to try and think about how we organize and sequence our activities, and in particular, how we create workflows to analyze legislation, to prioritize, to map stakeholders. And so indeed, we really recommend that you think about your processes, and now that you think about having the right tools to support those processes, whether that's ChatGPT, whether it's a tool like Lanzcape, whether it is a more sophisticated tool making use of big data and custom algorithms. So make sure you reflect on the checklist that we put together, and it's the same each year, that takes you through this process. Notably, that you still have a good eye on your objectives and that you're refreshing these and that you are moving through to your engagement. So I'll hand over to Michelle, and thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that you will have a very busy and enjoyable June.
Thank you very much, Paul and Stefan. Let me just take back control here so I can move to the next slide. So thank you very much, both of you. I would also like to thank our formidable research team, Giacomo and Mirela, who have done all of the research that went into this deck and who have put the deck together. Thank you both very much. And thank all of you who've taken the time out of your day today to join us for this edition. We will be sending everybody who did attend the complete recording. We'll make it available for you. We will also publish the slides publicly on LinkedIn, but the recording itself and the transcript will be available to attendees. Lastly, but not least, I would like to announce next month's, which will be on the 1st of July. That'll be the last one before the summer, and then we resume again at the end of summer. 1st of July, same time. Hope to see you there, and thank everyone once again, and have a great rest of your week.